Hey there, everybody. In this electrical troubleshooting video, we're going to be looking at the neutral light circuit, which involves the neutral light switch, the wiring all the way up to the bulb in the gauge cluster. So let's dive in and talk about how the circuit's wired up, and then we'll test each component, put it all together, and make sure it works. There it is. We're going to start with possibly the dirtiest part of any given motorcycle, which is the area below the chain cover or the small sprocket chain drive here, which is where the neutral switch lives in a lot of these vintage Hondas. In this case, on a CB350, our neutral switch is this gizmo right here. Now, depending on your bike model, there's lots of different neutral switch architectures and designs, and they're all a little bit different in how they look and how the physical mechanisms of them operate, but they all do the same thing. We start off with a connection to ground, which is in the engine case. So this is our wiring logic here. We're at ground. Our neutral light connected through the transmission will make contact and connect to ground. It always runs through a green wire with a red stripe. It's kind of a light green wire, red stripe, and it gets merged into the bundle of wires that are part of the stator coil up into the harness here. We have a round plug, which is a very notable plug for the wiring here. And actually we see this green wire with a red stripe on it here, this round plug. That's our neutral light plug. Our wire right there. It's in a little better shape on that side of the connection. From here, it's gonna run through the harness all the way back up through the headlight bucket to our actual bulb here on the gauge. Out of the bulb, back to a black 12-volt positive, and as we've talked about before, black 12-volt positives are part of our 12-volt positive circuit. Through the key switch, back to the positive side of the battery. Remember to watch our 12-volt positive video if you need help understanding that circuit. So it's actually a pretty simple wiring, routing for this whole thing. Usually the problem ends up with a lot of dirt and debris and stuff down here that's causing poor contact. But let's get in and test each part. Let's just see how it works. The first thing I'm going to go ahead and test is the actual neutral light switch itself. Oftentimes this is the problem because it gets so gunked up with dirt or debris or corrosion and it has to be taken off and cleaned. So don't be surprised if you're in here having to do a lot of cleaning to get the switch to work. But let's actually test it isolated from the rest of the circuit. It's part of this little wiring loom here that goes up to this round connector switch. That has the wires from the stator coil. Sometimes this is round, sometimes it's square. It just depends on the generation of the bike. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it. I've identified this green wire with the red stripe is in that terminal there. So we'll come back to that in a second. I'm going to take my test light. I'm going to connect my test light. I'll get a clip directly to the positive side of the battery. This means we shouldn't have to turn on anything on the bike. And we're going right there to that one. Test light kicks on. So that means I have connection from here through the wire into the switch, and the switch is actually touching ground. I'm gonna try to shift the bike into gear here and get it out of the neutral light. See if we can get it to turn off. Right, there we go. So I shifted up the second, neutral light came off. Back down the neutral, it kicks on. So it says that our neutral light switch is working and then our wiring is working up to this point here. So don't be surprised you have to take this all off and clean it and get all the gunk and goo out of it. All right, let's undo that and work our way up the harness. While I'm down here, I'm gonna go ahead and replug this back in. Now, these connectors are oftentimes full of corrosion or dirt, and they're not making good connection actually at the connection point. This is where I can take my test light. I'm still hooked up to the 12 volt to the positive side of the battery. I'm just gonna get in there like that and touch the back side of that wire there with the test light. Sure enough, I'm getting continuity through there. Go out of gear again. It's off. Back to neutral. It's on. So the actual switch is making good contact internally, but it could be one of those little pin connectors in there causing a problem. All right, from here, we're gonna work our way up into the headlight bucket. And we're up here at the headlight bucket now. I took the headlight off and we're looking at our bird's nests. And sure enough, I have found our light green wire with a red stripe on it, which is our neutral light wire. I have a connector right here. And this is the connector that goes between the harness that came through the bike up to the gauge light and this little connection right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect that. And I'm gonna test that I have good connection between this wire and 12 volt positive. And the way I'm gonna do that is with my test light. I'm gonna go ahead and connect this to here, my alligator clip, which I know tested was on ground, right? And then I'm gonna come into the solid black wire terminal right here. We know this is 12 volt positive in the system, so I'm gonna go ahead and tap into that. And I'm gonna turn on the key switch, and we're gonna see the test light kicks on, and it should kick on, no problem. Let me get to that key switch there. All right, key switch, 12 positive to here, through the test light, back through our wire that went all the way down to our neutral light. If I go down and shift it out of gear again, we should see that test light kick right off. Gear, neutral. So we know that our, all the way down to ground at the switch up to this point, we're good. So I'm gonna reconnect my wire here. And what this little bundle does here is it runs up to the gauge in the cluster and it goes through the light up there and then out here. We have another black 12 volt positive right here. So this goes in through the light, back out the 12 volt positive. So we're already connected to that. At this point, I should just turn the key on and see if my light bulb lights up or not. All right. No, look at that, kicks on. So our neutral circuit is good. That's it on our neutral light circuit. It's actually a very simple, straightforward circuit. Now, if our light had not kicked on after we reconnected the green and red wire to the light up here, we have a problem in either up here on the bulb or with the socket, or being connected back to the 12 volt positive right here. So we checked that was good on either side. So it would be an isolated issue up here if you had a problem, but that's pretty simple. There's a little light bulb in there. Gauge socket could be full of corrosion, could be dirty, something like that. Could be a burnt out bulb. But that's it on the neutral light circuit. It's a pretty straightforward circuit, regardless of the type of bike you have. The major difference you're gonna run into is the actual neutral light switches themselves, the architecture, how they're wired, like actually how the wire connects to them, and how they need to be cleaned and lubricated before you put them back together, just to make sure you're getting good contact to ground. Something else to keep in mind when dealing with the neutral light switches on the bikes is they are not available anymore. So that means you actually have to take apart a switch, clean it, make sure it's working, and put it back on a bike if possible. If not, you're gonna be looking for a used switch. Now, typically we find the switches don't actually go bad. They're actually pretty tough, but they may need to be taken apart and cleaned very well, but put back in the service. So keep that in mind. Don't expect to find a neutral switch on the shelf somewhere, because it's probably not gonna happen. With that, this is Brennan with Common Motor, common-motor.com on the internet. Thanks for watching. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Subscribe to our newsletter via the website. And of course, subscribe to this YouTube channel down below. Ring the bell for future notifications. And I'll see you next time.